Hello, welcome to Holistically Speaking. I am Morella DeVoe, your host. Our mission with Holistically Speaking is to be the avenue through which the voices of holistic health reach you at the time you need it most. And this week we're talking about depression again. We had our first show on depression and suicide with Dr. Heather Rice last week. And today we are joined again by Dr. Heather Rice. Welcome to the show again. I am so deeply grateful that you are here sharing all of this extremely important information with our viewers. Last week we talked about how prevalent depression is in the U.S. Just to recap, and for those of you who maybe didn't see last week's show, according to the CDC, 9% of the U.S. population is suffering from depression. And it's a problem that has tripled in the country since 1991. And depression was only affected about 3% of the population in 1991, but now it's upwards of 9%, and it's almost double the world statistic for depression, which is 5%. And suicide is 12.7 per 100,000, so 12 people in every 100,000 are committing suicide. And in Vermont, it's a little higher at 14 per 100,000. So it's a big problem, and it's an escalating problem. So thank you for being here, sharing everything that you know, your vast, very rich array of information and experience. I'm really appreciative on behalf of all of our viewers. And last week we focused on the physiology, the body aspect, the food, the exercise, the sunlight, the supplements, and the chiropractic adjustments. And today we want to talk a little bit about something a little different. And we wanted to preface the show with that Peanuts cartoon that we also had last week. So if we can show that again, because it's such a great little...
There's Charlie Brown saying, "This is my depressed stance. When you're depressed, it makes a lot of difference how you stand. The worst thing you can do is straighten up and hold your head high, because then you'll start to feel better. And if you're going to get any joy out of being depressed, you've got to stand like this."
You've got to stand in a depressed stance,
right,
in order to be depressed.
Yeah.
You can't lift your head up and hold onto that depression for very long. At least that's what the cartoon seems to say. How accurate is that?
It's very accurate. In fact, if we just had actors or actresses portraying a character, we just know when they're in this state that that's someone that's having trouble. Right. So we know that innately. Posture affects our moods, and it turns out that moods affect our posture as well. Right. And when we go into that state, that defensive state or that depressed stance, literally parts of our brain shut off. Ischemia, the blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the smartest part of the brain that has all the possibilities and solutions, it shuts down. And we go right into more of a fight or flight reactive response.
So a hunched down posture puts you more in fight or flight, and less of that kind of executive function of...
Beautifully said, yes, exactly.
Wow.
And it's a problem, because what are we seeing in our youth now with the pastimes, the hobbies? What are the pastimes and the hobbies? Right? There's actually, a diagnosis of text neck, right? Of trouble with your neck from texting too much. But we see this posture, this slumping posture, and it concerns me greatly when I see it in our youth, who should be this vibrant, robust state, and you see that. Right. And I can just feel depression coming on in those people sometimes, just because of that ongoing, never-ending defensive physiology aspect that the posture starts to program the brain to go into.
Right. So what you're saying is that the way that we hold our body is going to directly affect our emotional state.
Yes.
And if we change our body posture, if we change, just roll the shoulders back, look up, that automatically is going to lead to a change in mood?
People should try it out just to see, yeah. In fact, there's a fascinating understanding that if we look again at primitive people, there's actually a group of people that live in the jungle, that their tribe, they live in the jungle.
Yeah.
and they never get eaten by tigers. They never do. That tribe never gets eaten by tigers or lions or whatever the predators are.
The predators.
Except when the young men go and get drunk and they come back and their posture has shifted, then they are considered prey. But when they are in, and when you see the posture of these people, these that live in their jungle environment, they have this upright, open posture, where they're walking through the jungle. They own the jungle, and the predators don't go after them because they don't walk as though they're prey.
Yeah,
this is the posture of prey,
right?
Right. And so we know that how we hold our posture affects how other people interact with us as well.
Right.
It does. There was a wonderful TED Talk by a woman named Amy Cuddy, and she talks about how your posture can change how well you do in a job interview, for example.
Oh, yeah?
And she talks about taking on the superwoman posture. And it literally changes our cortisol levels, our testosterone levels. It changes our hormones in our body. And of course, our emotions come from what hormones are running around in our body at what time.
And what's her name again? So
Amy Cuddy.
Cuddy?
Yes, C-U-D-D-Y.
C-U-D-D-Y, Amy Cuddy.
Yeah.
And so that sounds really fascinating. So that it's measurable in specific physiological body markers, that there is a change produced in the body by a change in posture.
Yes, and actually on my website, under my video library, I have a little 6-minute video of posture exercises for sitting and standing that when people start to do them, they notice a change in their perspective of the world and their emotions.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll have to go check those out and watch those videos. But there was something also that you mentioned a little earlier that really resonated with me when you mentioned actors. You know, when actors in movies, get into a specific posture. The thought that brought to mind is that I've read that actors, in practicing these postures and practicing these states, they actually get themselves in those emotional states, so that playing a part of someone who's depressed or suicidal actually does have that physiological effect in the body. So they're pretending to be depressed, and they end up feeling quite depressed, and that these roles have an enormous, they have a toll. They leave a toll on their body and their emotional well-being. So then the opposite must also be true. If we start pretending, maybe, or changing the posture, changing, the way we hold our head, or even smiling, or just carrying ourselves differently, that we might start feeling different.
Yes, it's true. And another way to dramatically shift our mood, if we're in a stressed or depressed state, is looking to the emotion of gratitude. So they literally have hooked up electrodes to the brains and bodies of people, and they've had them think of depressing or stressful things, and all the different lights go off that measure stress in the body. And then simply having them think of something they're grateful for shifts all the chemistry in the body.
Right.
So even just starting to learn a practice of training your mind to go direct it towards the emotions that you want.
Right.
That we actually ends up we have more choice than we think we have.
Right.
And but it does take some effort. So personal development books and study courses and DVDs, they actually do make an impact.
Right.
And part of that is that the reinforcement, and keep going back to those positive things, and that starts to trigger it in the brain. And if we can add things like posture to help to reinforce that, then we'll get there even faster.
Right. So you mentioned personal development as an important avenue to overcome depression, or to maybe prevent depression from happening, from taking hold. What do you mean? What sort of personal development should people think of? Like,
well, there's certain authors that I think of that, if I am in a certain state and I want to change that state, I know I can go pick up certain books and just start reading anywhere, and suddenly I can feel things shift.
Yeah.
For me, certain poets do that.
Right.
But you can go right into the whole mind aspect of it. And I have certain favorite authors that I would refer people to.
Right.
Louise Hay would be one.
Yeah.
She's known as the mother of affirmations.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
So saying those affirmations of where you want to be, even if you're not there,
right,
actually has an impact.
Yeah.
And I'd like to bring EFT into that.
Yes.
Because EFT is what took affirmations that sometimes worked and transformed it into
really
almost
powerful.
always
Yeah.
I mean, working on a much more effective level.
EFT, or emotional freedom technique, is what you're referring to, which is a really powerful tapping technique. One of the beauties of EFT, I find, in the context of depression or anxiety or any emotional state, is that it helps people very quickly, through the technique, realize that they are no longer gripped by the emotion, or they're no longer gripped and driven or at the mercy of this emotional state. That what you just said before, that they actually have choice, starts to become a reality when they're doing EFT. Would you find that to be true in your experience?
It's dramatic, yeah. I have people that we do the tapping, and then a moment later they say, how did that happen? Like, wait a minute, I feel better.
Yeah.
And it was very anticlimactic.
Right.
But it was such a huge shift so quickly.
Yeah.
And again, it's working with the nervous system.
Right.
Tapping on the endpoints of the chi, the flow of energy in the body, the meridian system. So
EFT is a phenomenal tool that I think we both agree that people should explore. And if they are not, if our viewers, if you've never heard of EFT and you're curious as to this technique we're talking about, then in a matter of minutes can shift how you're feeling. Really minutes. It's quite dramatic. I suggest that you visit Heather's website. You can also email me, and we'll certainly put you in touch with practitioners who can help you. Because I think that one of the misperceptions, and tell me if you agree, one of the misperceptions, I think, in kind of the generalized view of moods and emotions, and certainly kind of psychiatric diagnoses, is that they are fixed and somewhat fixed. And what I mean by that you can't necessarily, it's almost like you're driven by the emotion, that you're at the mercy of the depression and you can't get yourself out of it, or at the mercy of the anxiety, or do you find that to be true, that people are feeling kind of run, almost?
Yes. Yeah, one of the things that I do in my practice is if someone has a piece that they're stressed about, or the depression, I actually am checking their nervous system, clearing the nervous system, and then I have them think of whatever they're stressed about. Yeah. I see the same patterns all of a sudden reappear. Like a moment the patterns were clear, and then the moment they bring that thought in, the patterns in the nervous system show up again. And then we clear them again, and then I have them think of it again, and this time they don't show up. And then I know we're really making some change in the patterning and the physiology that will tend to keep recreating that perspective.
Right.
And I think that's what drives that experience that people have of feeling like that emotion is driving them, they're caught in it, they can't get out of it.
Well, and it ends up being like a hamster wheel. I feel bad, so I have these negative thoughts, so I feel bad, so I continue the negative thoughts, and it just becomes this cycle where people can't get themselves out.
Yes, yeah. There's a wonderful book by Bruce Lipton, and it's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
Oh, interesting. I haven't.
Oh, it's a wonderful book. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He's a cellular biologist. Oh, wait, it's not Bruce Lipton. I'm sorry. No, it's Joe Dispenza.
Okay.
Joe Dispenza, who's a chiropractor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's all into the neurology aspect, and it's breaking the habit of being yourself. And he goes through a process of how to understand that you can change by changing your feelings will program your brain, and then your brain says, oh yeah, that's what we're feeling. And then it's a cycle like the hamster wheel. But he has ways that he teaches of breaking free of that.
Yeah. And in NeuroLinguistic Programming, they say that any emotional state is really only experienced for 30 seconds at a time. So a wave of emotion might come all of a sudden, very spontaneously, and the sadness or the anxiety or whatever emotion comes up, and you experience that for 30 seconds, and then if it continues after 30 seconds, it's really the thoughts that you're having that are maintaining it. So here we feel that the emotion is very real, and that this is the state that we're in, and we can't do anything about it when it's really our thoughts that are perpetuating the cycle. At least that's the perspective in neurolinguistic programming.
Right, yeah.
And you've seen, I guess, in your chiropractic adjustments that those patterns can actually stop.
Yes. And in fact, once I have someone, I'm working with them, and they have the negative thought, and we clear that, then I immediately ask them, just think of what the best case scenario would be. Picture yourself the way you want it to be, and picture yourself doing those things and feeling the feelings. What would it feel like if you were feeling that way? I just ask them, I just pose the question.
Right.
And the brain can't help trying to answer that.
Right.
And they go to a different picture, and then I see more and more ease coming into their nervous system. And then I know how we can then coach them. What are the things you're going to start thinking about now?
Right.
And making choice in the matter.
And the other thing, too, is if we couple it with posture, also in neurolinguistic programming, I remember when I was studying in hypnosis, that in neurolinguistic programming, we would do the exercise of have someone stand up, roll their shoulders back, look up, hold your chin up and look up and try to hold that negative feeling, negative thought, or pessimistic. And normally people start laughing because it feels very difficult.
Yes.
It feels very difficult to feel a pessimistic state or feel the sadness or confusion or whatever when you're doing this. As you were saying before, it has to come with that kind of rounded back, downward looking attitude. So it's fascinating that here we're just talking about very simple conscious choices that we can make that can start changing our experience of our reality, right?
Yeah. I wonder if the viewers want to know some of the recommended authors that they could check out.
Absolutely.
I have a list. Some will sound familiar to you, some you may not know. Tony Robbins.
Oh, yes, of course.
Robin Sharma, the monk who sold his Ferrari, right? James Allen, he wrote long ago, As a Man Thinketh.
Yeah.
It's a classic. Nathaniel Branden, he's the father of self-esteem. He's the go-to guy for that. Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul, right?
Absolutely.
Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And then I included Louise Hay. I would include Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
And then also Byron Katie. And Byron Katie has The Work, and she has a book called Loving What Is that's 4 simple questions that you ask yourself. All the instructions are in the first 20 pages.
I know, it's so powerful.
And again, it's just asking those certain questions and you shift.
Do you remember what the 4 questions are? I don't remember them right now.
It's something like, is what I'm thinking really true? And usually we have something that we're sure is true, but when we
is it true?
Is it 100% true?
Yeah.
And most of the time we can't say that it's 100% true. And then that starts to crack it open.
Right.
And then another important question was, who would I be if I didn't have that thought?
Right.
And then if you say, well, if I didn't have that thought and I just had the thought of all I'm doing is sitting here and enjoying a conversation right now, suddenly it opens up. Yeah,
right.
More possibility comes.
Yeah, and all of these authors, what I love is you have a really varied list with very different personalities, different styles. As a Man Thinketh is definitely a different style of Chicken Soup for the Soul, but they're essentially the same thing. So it's, like you said, forming a library of books where you can just kind of reach anywhere on any page for an inspiring thought that can give you a different perspective. Or what other practices or habits have you experimented with or seen help people with that self-development, personal development dimension?
I think the most powerful thing is something called the hour of power. So that's like really putting it in your schedule. For most people, it's going to be the very first part of the day. And it even doesn't even have to be an hour. It could be half an hour, and actually it could just be 5 minutes. But it's 5 minutes that you give yourself, where you are choosing your thoughts. Perhaps you have a morning affirmation that you use. That's what I do every morning. I have a morning affirmation. anything that I'm working on, it goes into that affirmation.
Right.
So I have that sets the tone of my day.
Yep.
And perhaps going into some meditation. And again, for me, sometimes that's a 5-minute meditation. It doesn't have to be an extended, long thing.
It doesn't have to be sitting for an hour.
Right. Could be including some exercise in there. And it turns out that you can do a lot in 7 minutes of exercise.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, I know people are busy, because I am too.
I know.
And I did the research and I figured out what are the little things that we do that we get our greatest benefit from. So I think those are powerful. And then going into eating healthy food, starting the day out with really healthy food.
Right, yeah. And I love that you're bringing that up in terms of starting your day intentionally, because I think it's something that, quite frankly, nobody does, the majority of people don't do. And what's happening now, you see it everywhere, you hear people talking about it. The way people are starting their day is turning on their phone, checking Facebook, checking their email. And so automatically they're not starting in a place of power. And you know, kind of being drawn, pulled by social media, pulled by whatever junk landed in your email, is the least empowered way to start your day. And that, you know, starting your day with affirmations, and if you can't come up with any affirmations, you know, grabbing a Louise Hay book or a Louise Hay deck of cards and just pulling a card and seeing how that can start to shift the way that you're experiencing life. But you have to start your day with intention. One other piece too is just do something different than you usually do. So in your day, if you usually drive to work the same way, drive a different way. Just doing something different starts to open up different parts of your brain, and you can start to consider different perspectives. Right. So just doing something differently. If you're always eating with your right hand, just start eating with your left hand. See what that's like, and it just starts to stimulate different parts of the brain. The other piece too. Anytime we have some sort of ritual or habit that we want to create, sometimes it's best if we have an accountability partner. So if we say, I'm going to get up early and exercise, you're going to have somebody that you're going to tell them, I'm going to do this, and then when the alarm goes off and you're thinking, no, maybe I'll start tomorrow. But wait, no, I told them I was going to start today. Then you actually do it. So oftentimes it's hard to start new rhythms, new rituals, new habits. But having an accountability partner is what can be very powerful. And I think that's another piece with depression is the social aspect of it. I was just going to say the socialization piece. Yeah. So, you know, having somebody that you can connect with, that's a big piece of this whole dilemma, is that we are thinking that we're socializing when we're doing it on email or texting. We think that's socializing. Texting or Facebook or whatever. Yeah, but actually looking at someone face to face, that is the thing where real support comes from and where real change can happen. Well, and real connection that really kind of helps you create a different emotional state. One of the things that's also troubling about social media, I don't know if you've heard about it or read about it, is what some people have called Facebook depression, where, you know, just in terms of the amount of time spent, you know, going through social media, whether it's Facebook or whatever else, but that some people are experiencing this thing called Facebook depression because they're seeing how everybody else is so happy and how great everybody else's lives are. And then I was thinking a little earlier when you're talking about the hunched posture that goes hand in hand with a depressed state. If people are now hunched over, looking at how happy everybody else is, and how, because you know, people are very selective in their posts, obviously. So, you know, they're looking at other people and comparing themselves negatively and experiencing, you know, despair or sadness or whatever. So they're not socializing, they're in a poor posture, and they're creating these stories about everything they don't have or they're not and all the joy they don't have as compared to other people. So it's tremendous that, you know, kind of no wonder that we're, as a population, people are getting more and more depressed. Yeah. So I think that's an important piece to look at is who are you hanging out with? And sometimes you're in a crowd of depressed people. Right.
And if you recognize that all your friends and
Yeah.
your family and everybody around you is also depressed, it's much harder to change how you
Right.
are. And so you want to actually get out, do something different, find a different group of people that
Right.
are more inspired. If you feel like you're the only depressed person in your group, then lots of those folks are there to help you.
Yes,
And you just need to
exactly.
connect with them.
And talk to them about what's going on.
And also not talk to them about it. So just keep it light.
Right.
Right, both of those things.
That's a good point as
so
well.
Times when you feel like you can connect with someone and share your troubles,
Yeah.
and then they're going to have different perspectives that can help you. Oh, I didn't think of that.
Right.
But then also give that a break and just do something
Yeah.
fun. Just
Yeah.
hang out, just small talk,
Exactly.
just go to the movies, just do something
So
fun.
in terms of these aspects of personal growth and socialization and obviously posture as well, you're looking at all of these from the chiropractor's perspective. And you have your illustration of the spine. So I'm curious, just as you did in the previous show, and you showed us how different spots of the spine might be connected with different organs that are associated with depression. On the screen here again, we have the spine illustration. So what else can you tell us as the chiropractor who sees people with
Yeah, well, I can tell you that they actually have had research studies that they've actually measured depression and anxiety, and they found that there actually have been profound changes, and they even did things like x-rayed the spine and looked at the alignment of the vertebrae, and then they corrected the alignment, and that correlated with those people actually having a increase in lifestyle choices that were healthier,
Yeah.
increase in life enjoyment. And one of the largest studies ever done, almost 3,000 people, they looked at chiropractic care over a few months, and 76% of the people in that study, again, almost 3,000 of them in 150 different chiropractic offices, 76% reported improvements in emotion, and improvements in dealing with stress more effectively, and improvements in life enjoyment.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was even in the up until 1960, there was actually from 1926 to 1960, there was a chiropractic sanitarium. And it was specifically for helping people with mental illnesses, and it was a hospital, Clearview
Right.
Sanitarium it was called, and all they did was chiropractic care there.
Right. So from just general alignment, people
By clearing the
obviously-
nervous system, correcting the nerve interference, it allowed the brain to run the body better.
Yeah.
That improved the endocrine system, the hormonal system.
Right.
It improved the functioning of the brain. And through those methods, people got help. And they didn't have the detrimental side effects that can often come with the conventional ways of trying to treat depression
Obviously.
with drugs.
So you have a class, and I want our viewers to know that coming up on October 2nd at 7:30, Dr. Heather is going to be teaching a teleclass, so you can participate from the comfort of your home via telephone, and you can sign up for that class. It's a free class at Dr. Heather's website, which is www.wellspringcls.com, and the class page is /SAD1014, as in October 14. So that's a class where you're going to obviously be sharing a lot of this, and surely a lot more, because we pretty much run out of time. And I want to thank you again so very much that you joined me in this conversation, because I know that a lot of what you talked about today is very new to our viewers. And so is there anything else in the last 30 seconds or so?
Just that there's just too many people in our community that are sick and suffering and over-medicated and just don't know where to turn. And there's help for them out there. And there's drug-free help out there.
Right.
And that people can look for it, and it's there, and we can help.
Yep. Thank you so much. I hope that you learned as much as I did today. And if you didn't catch our show last week, we also talked about nutrition, about supplements, movement, etc. You can watch that show on our YouTube channel. It's Holistically Speaking TV. It might take a week or two to get it up there, but I invite you to watch that show and all of our other shows on YouTube as well. Thank you again for joining me. Join me again next week, where we'll have another show on depression and suicide from a different perspective. Thanks again. See you next time.